Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet. I'm Chris McNulty, here with my Partner Edition co-host, the one and only camper of renown, Mark Cashman.
Oh, well, the tent is put away, thank you, Chris, and back under the roof of the house. And as your partner in crime of this podcast, the Intrazone, I am excited to be here.
Great to have you again, Mark. At Microsoft, our mission is to deliver our solutions to help individuals and organizations do more and achieve more. Partners are essential to that mission. We can't do this alone. Each month on the Intrazone, we sit down with a partner who helps us in that mission.
On this next episode of the Microsoft Partner Series of the Intrazone, we're talking with our partner Jeff Willinger from Fujitsu, who focuses on platforms and alliances. And we have a special conversation with their customer, Boys Hope, Girls Hope, where we chat with Pete Schweiss, their data and support specialist and overall cloud strategist.
You know, when Jeff Willinger is a longstanding MVP and member of the community, joined Fujitsu, and then in organizing this show, mentioned that he wanted to bring Boys Hope, Girls Hope on. Once we took a look at this, we realized this is just a great customer story to showcase. It's an organization that really helps academically capable and motivated children with needs to get to their potential and really provide ways for them to get into these educational supportive environments that lead them forward through development into college.
Yeah, I think the challenge that the Boys Hope, Girls Hope, and we'll hear it directly from Pete, was they were looking for a way to consolidate how they could streamline what was very paper-based and moving into this digital world, but with the value of they want to spend time helping the children, the boys and girls, become more value-centered around their environment and give them an opportunity to educate and move them through the realm of education through even to college. And with that notion, a lot of what you'll hear from Pete, I think, is he's very technical. He knows certainly what Microsoft offers and what Fujitsu could offer to help augment and get them to where they need to be. But a lot of what he really is chartered to focus on is to highlight business solutions, not to manage technology. And in working with Fujitsu and moving to the Microsoft 365 cloud, I'm really anxious for everybody to hear the combination in terms of the partnership and the solution ultimately that they leverage and continue to leverage. But again, more on that backdrop of how to help Boys Hope, Girls Hope move forward, not necessarily just maintain IT.
Yeah, I do think, before we kind of also introduce Fujitsu and their mission, one thing, Mark, I'd love to get your thoughts on. You've worked with a number of nonprofits over the years. What are some of the things that you've observed that are really applicable to everyone, regardless of what kind of organization they're working in?
I think a lot of it is as we make advantages in the user experience, and what was more of a focus from Microsoft and the technology that supported it. The past was really you needed to build your solution to meet what it is you were trying to achieve. And there was a lot of heavier lifting up front. And I think the focus has been with Microsoft 365 and, of course, the value to customers, whether they are not-for-profit or just they don't have a large IT staff, is to more easily manage the environment or potentially not think about managing the environment once they're set up, or leveraging when they need it, partners that can come in, help them out, streamline, augment, and then really move beyond what it is maybe the cost of the partner or the cost of training and learning, and that there's a lot of value in the work that we've been doing to make the experience better. I also think there's some complete advantages around cost and value to not-for-profits. There is a specific plan and SKU that you get from Microsoft if you qualify as a not-for-profit, and it's not a streamlined or a trimmed down plan. It's a full functioning plan with a lot of access to both Microsoft and the ways that if you have special requirements, you can augment with partners. And I think Boys Hope, Girls Hope is a prime example of that. But to the benefit, as you're asking, where everybody would see the advantages is as the tools and technology become easier to access, not just at a lesser cost for certain partners and customers, but that there's a lower barrier of entry to manage, again, the business, not IT.
I've always found, some of the nonprofits I've worked with have to really be focused on, efficiency and innovation because as you mentioned, they don't have large IT staffs. They have to be clever users are sort of the lifeblood of that organization. And that's, it's really interesting that they encountered Fujitsu along the way.
Yeah, and Fujitsu is not a small company. We certainly know it at the most broad level, 162,000, at Fujitsu. And then as you focus in on where Jeff is based out of, he works for the Fujitsu Computer Products of America out of Sunnyvale, California. And they really more focus on where it comes into play into your program. Can you just speak a little to the unique and specific role of this arm of Fujitsu in the context of your content services program?
We're really proud that Fujitsu is a Microsoft preferred member of our content services partner program. They've been instrumental with us as we're getting ready for the Project Cortex launch. We've known the folks over there for a long time. And if you're not familiar with Fujitsu, they're out there helping organizations find inefficiencies, find things that are frequently paper-based or antiquated processes, solving the problem of how do you digitize those? How do you accelerate those so that you can really let people focus on their business productivity and less on their business bureaucracy?
Yeah. So I say, Chris, as we scan the horizon, knowing that Fujitsu is going to help people scan their documents, that's very much going to streamline how people scan their business and move forward. Should we move into hearing from Fujitsu and Boys Hope, Girls Hope, both talking with Pete and Jeff and hearing what they're up to?
Absolutely. So let's get started and welcome them to the broadcast. So up next on the Intro Zone, today we are sitting down with Jeff Willinger from Fujitsu and Pete Schweiss from Boys Hope, Girls Hope International. Gentlemen, welcome to the Intro Zone.
Thank you. I have wanted to get into this Intro Zone for a super long time, so thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Jeff, if we can start with you, if you can just give us a sense of who is Jeff, what drives Jeff to wake up and do what he does in the morning, and then specifically what you're doing with Fujitsu.
Sure. Jeff Willinger, what my main responsibility is at Fujitsu is really continuing our amazing relationship with Microsoft, and really at the end of the day, promoting our fabulous line of scanners, specifically a scanner that is, I call it the future of scanning today. So what the future is going to be, it's happening now. It's our FI 7300 NX network scanner. And that's really what gets me up in the morning.
Nice. So do you ever scan yourself and digitize yourself? And if I can't sound too old, do any Sims relations with Fujitsu and yourself?
So, what's funny is, I never really thought too much about scanning technology before I joined Fujitsu. I just knew that basically sort of like SharePoint, you just want it to work. Your iPhone, you just want it to work. One of the perks, I'm doing air quotes, perks of coming on at Fujitsu was I got a scanner almost instantly. And so what did I do? Exactly what everyone might do is got rid of all the paper in my office. So the beauty of it is, I was able to scan directly to email. Being an MVP, I have my own SharePoint site, SharePoint Online, over Wi-Fi, Ethernet, USB connection. It really doesn't matter. So yeah, I definitely scanned everything that I had in my house. So I'm very, very versed in it. And the beauty of it is, again, things that I didn't really think about before was, I had some crumbled up pieces of paper. I had some coffee stains on some of the pages that I had. No surprise for those of you that know me. It really cleaned up. The document came out better than when I actually put it into the scanner. So, using our PaperStream IP, this powerful image cleanup tool to make sure that all my scans look perfect. It was pretty cool.
That's excellent. Well, we will drill into more about what Fujitsu does, the scanners themselves, and of course the service to then digitize and get things up into the cloud. But before we move too far, let's get into who is Pete. Pete Schweiss, welcome and thank you for joining the Intro Zone. Can you share a little bit more? I see on your LinkedIn profile, the first thing that you list is that you are a dad, which is awesome. Beyond dad, can you share a little bit about who Pete is and what you do with Boys Hope, Girls Hope?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's funny. I saw someone else list dad as their first job on LinkedIn. I thought that was pretty cool and pretty centering for their professional network, you know.
I thought it was a digital active directory. It was my mistake at first, but dad is a great first quality.
Yeah, so I work for Boys Hope, Girls Hope, headquartered here in Missouri, supporting 16 affiliates across the U.S. and Latin America. They previously had a very, very robust on-premise infrastructure that over the last 10 years, they've really migrated to the cloud to the point now where by the end of this year, we're looking to decommission all of our on-premise infrastructure and leverage the cloud for everything, which is a pretty exciting, given the times we're in. It was a well-planned, convenient project to have completed. So I've been at Boys Up Girls about a year. Prior to that, I spent 9 years in the restaurant industry. I have a degree in culinary arts. Some people think it's an odd connection, technology and culinary arts, but they're both very technical, very, there's a lot of relatability that I've found over the last couple of years. And because I grew up around technology, I was always in the restaurants in charge of running the kitchen and making sure anything that plugged into the wall worked. So I've always had my hand in technology throughout my entire professional career.
Very nice.
Let's start and talk a little bit more about Fujitsu, Jeff. I know you're a longstanding friend of the program, friend of SharePoint, friend of Microsoft. You joined Fujitsu relatively recently. Would love it if you could kind of give our audience some insight about what Fujitsu does, what your discovery has been.
Things that I never really thought about. Again, thanks for that intro, Chris. There are a lot of different technologies out there. I thought about maybe doing some more consulting. And then, truth be told, my new mentor, Bernie Schweiss, sort of sold me on the idea of, hey, you know what? It's Fujitsu. We're a division of the larger Fujitsu Computer Products of America. We had an opportunity to really make an impact. Instead of being a small fish in a large ocean, I could actually be a bigger fish in a medium-sized ocean. And it's really, in the short time that I've been there, just making headway on different challenges that customers face. Because at the end of the day, it is all about the end user, right? Although we don't sell directly to end clients, obviously that's my background as end clients. So going through the channel and educating them, sort of like a million years ago when I first entered the SharePoint ecosystem, educating customers on the virtues of SharePoint, because we all know, if I'm at a cocktail party and I tell people, in the old days I was a SharePoint consultant, you would get that sort of, ugly face. Yeah, we have SharePoint, and then fill in the blank. Well, now in the scanning world and the rise of RPA, as evidenced by Microsoft's recent purchase, challenges that customers have, these labor-intensive repetitive tasks, manually processing, which is obviously prone to human error. We're doing more with less, right? Limited personnel to perform these manual tasks. The cost of these manual processes and time spent, and then the high cost of hardware and software. It sort of opened the door for me to come in with a whole set of new solutions, which I've been obviously very, very up to the challenge. Automating these processes that were once manual, eliminating this human error, improve data integration and validation, improve speed processing the documents, and with not a lot of training. And I'm sure you probably know this, Chris and Mark, 90% of the data in existence has been generated in the past 2 years. That is insanity. And 500 billion Office documents were created last year alone. People are like, oh, paper's going away. Paper might be going away the way we're using it, but it's not going away completely. Sort of like, remember when email first came out? I don't know if you guys are old enough. Everyone was like, whoa, so much for, snail mail anymore. Well, I haven't seen any sort of decrease in snail mail. People are still writing letters. There's nothing like getting a handwritten note. I don't know. It's been super fun for me and a great challenge working for a fabulous organization like Fujitsu.
So can you talk a little bit about what your role is? I mean, everyone's roles, I think, here in the middle of 2020 look a little bit different than they might have expected back in January. But what's your role like at Fujitsu now?
At the end of the day, I'm sort of like what I've been doing my whole life, evangelizing our product line, evangelizing what can be. I always call it the art of the possible. So my true responsibility is partnering with companies like Microsoft, Google, AWS on one side. On the other side, the MFP channel, which stands for Multifunction Printer Channel, companies like Ricoh, Konica Minolta, Kyocera, Sharp, Toshiba, who manufacture copiers and multifunction devices, but they don't have a pure scanning solution. So we partner with them. So hopefully they use Fujitsu scanners when their clients come to them for a solution.
You know, in this space, I always have this image, especially when you think of operationalizing at scale, when a customer decides to digitize, whether it's additive or it's just wanting to catch up into this digital transformation. But I can't help but always have this image of that end scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where they're just boxes and boxes and boxes just endlessly going down and they're rolling in the Ark of the Covenant. And you just have this image of, so many physical documents, or in that case, remnants. And if I can use that analogy to bridge, Pete, we want to hear from you in terms of that connection to Fujitsu, everything that Jeff has been sharing to optimize with these beautiful scanning technology to get paper into digital format. What was that transition like for you? And really, if you can help share when you first decided that we wanted to connect with Fujitsu and accomplish X, what did that look like?
Sure. The first indicator that we had that we needed to connect with someone in terms of our corporate artifacts was when rooting through filing cabinets trying to find this one specific document. I looked at our CFO and our VP of operations and said, guys, we spent the last hour and we still can't find this document. There's got to be a better way to do this. A lot of our procedures are more or less, it's always worked. We've always done it this way. So that's what we've done, and then we reached out to Fujitsu and said, hey guys, here's our problem, coupled by the fact that we're selling our building. How can we make this easier? How can we get all this stuff into some sort of repository? At the time, SharePoint hadn't been decided on. Just we knew we needed them in a digital repository. And then Fujitsu came in and said, yeah, we have the NX Manager, we have the 7300 scanner, we can do all of this. Then it became a question for us of, we have the technology now. The biggest question that we had to answer for ourselves was, what do we digitize? How long do we keep it? How do we maintain that life cycle? And how do we make it accessible for all of our team members, without giving them access to too much? Frankly, there was a lot more that we didn't think about until Fujitsu entered the picture and really helped us understand what it meant to take all of our artifacts and make them digital.
Can you just maybe give us one example of when you say artifact, what kind of content or content type you're talking about? If there was something in physical form, what was that thing? And then I heard you, the real value was to be able to find things. And of course, your thought then to organize and structure around governance. But just give us one example of what was one of those things that was physical and is now digital.
So we support an affiliate network of 16 different affiliates across the US and Latin America. And every month they send us these huge packets of all their financial data. And we help them to reconcile and do a bunch of different financial processes. And those was our biggest grouping of artifacts and the ones that we refer to most commonly. So those were the first ones we looked to digitize. And so bringing all those in was just a huge time saver for our finance department.
Jeff, if that example was something that you then hear, how would you evangelize the getting started with Fujitsu? You can, of course, onboard in your brain what it is that they want to accomplish. What's then that kind of message back to, sure, we can help you, and here's how we're going to do it?
We all know, being a consultant for the past 12 years, the number one pain point in every organization is search. Right, Mark? I mean, we've all been there. You can't find things. So if I said to you, I can make your internal business life easier. If you're like me or a regular person, you're always searching for things and you could never find them. I'm not talking about a special shirt. I'm talking about really important information, finding the expert in the organization, finding documents that maybe haven't been tagged properly. If I could tell you that I could help you with that, what is that worth? Our scanners, like as far as cost goes, it's really minuscule in the whole scheme of what the value, right? You have to have value. Why are we doing something? Are we doing just to do it? Are we doing it for an actual business purpose? So that's how I always look at things. Why are we doing this, and how can we solve this issue or problem?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. Some of the research we've been doing on this is fascinating. So Microsoft did some work 4 years ago, and we found that the productivity drain from unfindable content, just how long it took people to find it, was something on the order of 4.3%. And when you annualize that and look at a country like the United States, that's about $768 billion of lost productivity from search. That was 4 years ago. We've got some more recent work that we've done that's looking at how people are responding to the COVID crisis, and especially the challenges of working remotely and being dispersed. That suggests that it isn't just that the volume of data that people are looking at has grown. People are spending 3 times as much time as ever before looking for information that already exists, but they just can't find it.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that.
Pete, one of the things that I don't want to get too far from, and I think what Chris and I, when we were reviewing, the focus of Boys Hope, Girls Hope, a lot of what is out on your public website is the focus of graduation stories, the stories of hope that you, of course, are focused on bringing to both men and women in providing them opportunities with education through college and a lot of things to support both themselves and their families and then their future. How does everything that we've been talking about give a focus and a centering around who supports them, how they come in and out of the system, and really to ground it in what Boys Hope, Girls Hope does when you think about digitizing and making things easier to find and working with the branch offices or the other parts of the organization as they send things in to the more central office? How does that all collate in support of the different people that come through the program?
Sure. So the biggest way that any sort of digital automation, whether it's this product we're talking about or just simply streamlining an already digital process, it allows our team members all across the country and all across Latin America to be able to focus on the scholars that we serve, focus on the youth that we serve. Every time we make something easier or automate something, and if we can save time in their days from having to search for documents, that's just more time they can spend focused on the mission. So that's always kind of at the root of everything we do IT related is simply to make sure that, is it going to be easier for the end user? Is it going to save them time? And does it ultimately allow them to focus on the mission and serve the youth that is our mission to serve?
That's great. I can see the value that Fujitsu brings to give you the capability to digitize and, of course, optimize and move at scale, and that it really serves to then the value that Fujitsu brings to Boys Hope, Girls Hope, which then, of course, is transferred to that greater good of what really your vision and strategy is for helping the scholars that come through. That's great. It reminds me of when we transitioned from on-premises to the cloud. There was that notion of the role of IT, of course, went through a lot of change, and there was some fear there, and there was some worry. But the goal was to move away from managing the server to help managing and supporting the business. If that is true from, I think, a lot of what we all have grown up in the last 5 to 10 years, no matter what direction you went with the cloud, or at least optimizing and updating services on premises or a hybrid, that notion of furthering the cause versus managing the service, from what I hear you saying, that is a lot of what you got in partnering with Fujitsu as well.
Absolutely. The shift out of managing servers, really, IT, in my opinion, has really become supporting the business process at this point. It's a lot less, with the cloud, you don't have as much of the worry of the servers and the physical, and did we do the backups last night, all that kind of stuff. More so of understanding the business processes and then plugging in solutions to support those processes.
If I could just jump in, capturing, routing, processing, storing data are all distinct activities, right? Each has its own challenges, opportunities for increased business efficiency, right? That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Sometimes the data is born in digital. In reality, government forms, invoices, receipts, contracts, business correspondences are not. They're still printed, filed out by hand, filled out by hand, signed, then sent, via courier, snail mail, or handed directly to the clerk over the counter, right? Capture can be the most expensive part of document processing, and it doesn't have to be.
It's interesting that you say that, and it's something that we've all who study the space closely, we have a good gut understanding of what we're talking about here, but I'd love to have you express for an outsider who may be thinking of scanning and faxing technologies of 20 years ago, like really what's there possibly that we could be doing better now that we weren't doing 20 years ago? Would love to get your thoughts on that.
For me, and I think about, I can only go by what our product line is, this FI 7300NX, the one that Pete's company has deployed. It's deployed without a PC. So what it's doing is reducing IT, computer equipment, training, installation costs. It could be connected with an Ethernet, and the funny thing is I'm not a sales guy. I feel like I'm giving a pitch, but it's super intuitive, right? At the end of the day, we want to make our lives easier. When I first got into consulting, I would give a statement of work to a client. They would look at it and they'd see a creative line, and then they would see a line for user experience, a totally separate line item. And people say, well, if it's creative, why do I need UX? Well, UX is the secret sauce. To me, UX is a secret sauce to digital transformation within an organization. I used to build intranets, and if it's not easy, people are never, ever going to do it, right? So I think of that ease of use. When I came to Fujitsu, I didn't know anything about scanners. They sent me one. I wouldn't consider myself a total geek where I could just figure things out, but I was able to figure it out relatively quick and start scanning my personal documents to get rid of all the paper in my office. I don't know what it was like 20 years ago. I'm guessing the difference between now and then is probably, the capture technology has obviously gotten better, capturing using the handwriting analysis, capturing metadata, and being able to send them to the appropriate place. That's what it's all about, right? That automated extraction. I think about, with Cortex coming out, that automated extraction, tagging, and the tagging, which improves search, which we talked about earlier, in discovery, based upon seeding those topics from your taxonomies. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right?
I think that certainly mentioning Cortex, and Pete, will put you on the spot just a little bit as far as your consideration of Cortex. When we hear you talking about optimizing processes, transitioning from managing the service and servers to really supporting the business, a lot of it is to optimize. And if it started with search, obviously it starts with scanning, moves to search, where people can find content. You can start to build workflows against the capture so that it does X, Y, and Z, notifies certain people. When you think of Cortex coming into the mix, certainly still early days as far as Cortex rollout in terms of the what is where we're at right now. And when you see it landing in your environment in the future, what do you see it first doing for you from what you understand?
In our environment, I think the way I see that is, we have a very complex classification structure right now just to get the documents into the right place. We're making sure when they come in, they're either being barcoded or that we're somehow identifying them so that Power Automate can route them to the right place. What I see Cortex doing for us is taking a lot of that out, right? Training the AI to really just know the document and help us classify it. And then also a very big concern for us is kind of what's going on in the world with social distancing and with the pandemic. Like, we can no longer say, okay, 15 subject matter experts, let's all get in one room together and sit here at the scanner and classify these things. It's just not feasible. So now we have to find ways to continue to complete the project without that. And I think Cortex will be huge there in really helping us. I can have 2 or 3 people scan documents. I can have multiple people work remotely, classifying them, getting them to the right place, all with the aid of Cortex. I think could be huge for us.
Yeah, and I will just assert, knowing that you recently with Fujitsu digitize documents into SharePoint in Microsoft 365. You have access to some of the broadest capabilities within Microsoft 365. So you're already there and you will continue to put content there. I think the value of Cortex will be both in that onboarding of content process, but also in now that knowledge management, that broader scope of the forever on switch, the ways that it will help with people, across the organization, new and old, to be able to find out the right topics, that they can drill into and learn more of if you've got new offerings or new ways that you're supporting the scholars. But beyond that, it still is at that core of being able to make sense of content at scale, especially when, it's coming in this new digitized format. You can really optimize for what you capture, where it then is sent, and then how people can visualize it, hopefully in a lot more of an automated way without any of those hard categorizations. It's really still with the same output. Things are discoverable, usable, but more automated and more dynamic. Chris, anything that you've heard that you want to add in terms of where Cortex is really going to help in the future?
What's interesting is, we do have some of our customers who kind of, if you think about Cortex as having at least two facets. One is really focused on using AI to look for patterns in unstructured content to be able to organize topics together. And the other is a little bit more formalized, being able to use the tools of AI and capture to recognize and tag content using rules that you expect. There's an interesting dialogue between the two in that, we know how we want to tag purchase orders and tag contracts and so forth. There's learnings that come from people who discover that there are topics that exist in their realm that they didn't know were already out there, and how you start bringing a little bit more structure and rigor into the topic, the content that you have around a given school program, say. You might not have even realized that there were some common threads across those. There's definitely a lot of back and forth we see between kind of structured data and semi-structured knowledge. And I'd love to kind of see how this plays out for the organization.
Yeah, I think one other key thing that I neglected to hit on was we had a good classification system with our initial deployment of this project. But I think what'll be huge with Cortex, I hope will be huge for us, is kind of what you guys are all talking about, is the discovery process. There'll be keywords and metadata and all sorts of stuff that we would have never captured in our previous deployment that Cortex will hopefully allow us to capture and really enable that search experience for all of our end users and just make finding stuff. That's the number one thing we get help tickets on is I can't find X, Y, or Z, so hopefully bridging that will be a big thing for us.
Yeah, I can no doubt imagine that if the first step is to digitize and get it in, then the immediate value is to be able to search and categorize. I'm also envisioning, once you have a digital document, and it doesn't matter whether you convert it into a PDF or, into something that's more office related, depending on the content type, or just images and other types of content, the usability of it in the cloud is also then tantamount because you've found it. Now, what are you going to do with it? It's easy to share. Obviously, it's easy to wrap around the level of permissions and access. You had mentioned that you want to provide it to people, but not at the same level of access for everybody. So the way that you can share it differently than if you sent somebody a physical document, and what can they do with it? You have to remember to get it back from them. Signatures obviously are important, and there's a lot of different workflow. But that value of being able to then use the content, and maybe, Jeff, this is a lot of, I would bet, a part of the pitch when you talk about user experiences. What is some of that conversation when you get beyond the job of getting content to the cloud or operationalizing it every time you need to do so, but move into the use and adoption? We talked about it a little bit. Jeff, what else do you talk about once a piece of content is digitized, the usability of it?
We talk about digital transformation, and I know I've mentioned it a number of times because every CEO is talking about it, especially with the current state, the stay at home. We haven't really talked about what it's like to work out of your home. Now, I've worked out of my home for the past, 7 or 8 years, so it's not a big deal for me. But for others, having the right tools within your home to be able to do your job. Obviously, a PC at a bare minimum. And then as we get more elaborate with, better cameras for your computer, better microphones so that we could come through crystal clear. But it's the exact same thing internally when you're scanning documents. We talked about findability earlier. When we think about this idea of digital transformation, it's way more than technology. Routing has issues, but it's really how that technology is harnessed to improve business models and to gain that real operational efficiency and really revolutionize the customer experience. And when we think about the customer experience, that CX, what is that like within an organization? And many times it's we have great experiences on many social platforms, but, internally our social platforms, our intranet is not always up to snuff because, again, like we had talked about earlier, people might be scanning documents, but if there's no, you're scanning them into the into the Twitter sphere, but if they don't have a place to go, if the processes are not in place with data entry, and having workflow as part of it, it's going to fail. We really need to do a better job. When I say we, the world needs to do a better job of doing that, exact thing with that data entry. It's slow, it's dull work. The majority of time spent on capture rather than rather than handling. The manual process is expensive. Like I talked about earlier, prone to droughts and bottlenecks, paper jams, all of the above. Even workflow can have delays without proper aging notifications and approval redundancies. I could go on, but yeah, I hope that sort of answers where we were going with this.
Yeah, it got me thinking, a question for Pete. When you all were essentially moving out of the building, downsizing and digitizing, you made a comment earlier about you used to get a lot of IT tickets for X. How do I find or where is this thing? If you use that same pattern, we used to get a lot of IT tickets for X, the move to the cloud, and if it centers around documents, what are you not hearing anymore because of this new environment and new way of working? It may still be relatively new with some of the timing. I know some of this is new. But when you think of what you used to support and now in this new era, with SharePoint and Microsoft 365 and other tools and technology you're using, it doesn't have to be always Microsoft. What are some of the things that are different from the past that you're no longer hearing from your users in that you used to support them in X and now with some of this new technology, it handles it or it serves them better?
Honestly, in the current world we're in, we were using Teams prior to the stay-at-home scenarios that we're in, but it was adopted somewhat, but not quite universal. Obviously, this work from home has just pushed us that much further into the Teams side of the Microsoft ecosystem. And what that really did for us is we used to get a lot of tickets on, I need to connect with XYZ people, I need to get these documents out for my board meeting. What Teams really did was eliminated a lot of that. Obviously being back-ended in SharePoint, all of our documents already existed there. When folks were scheduling meetings, creating teams, they were realizing the value of having it all in one place. And it cut down on a lot of those tickets of, hey, I'm using this other service to share documents, but it won't integrate here. A lot of those third parties that we had struggled with integrations on, once our team saw the value in Microsoft Teams, a lot of those got cut down, which was kind of all part of our SharePoint initiative.
One of the values, I know I've heard Chris say it a number of times, and I say it as well, when we're starting to answer sometimes what starts as a what to use when style question, but it also moves into this aspect of governance or better organizing. And we've talked a lot about getting content into the cloud for the first time. You have to choose a destination, and the way that it works these days is obviously SharePoint is a backend to a lot of things, but it's also where is then the content going to be used or needed. And sometimes you can think in terms of a SharePoint site or a specific container for a project. But what you mentioned was that notion of teams. And there is a way, of course, to scan and direct into an existing team if that's the right thing. But I think the other part of digital transformation in the sense of usability is where are the people? Where do they need their documents who needs to have access. And some of that is based on scanning and getting it to the right location. It is also just where do you start and where do you put that document in the first place? Sounds like you're already there and moving forward. It's not just an IT directive. It also just sounds like that is how people are adopting to work in this new model.
Absolutely. Another big thing that has come up across our affiliates is a lot of individual locations had on-premise storage, network-attached drives, sometimes physical servers. This, to the question of where do things go, that's kind of like the big part of this. They saw the value in SharePoint and Teams so much so that they, through the last couple of months, have migrated documents in, which has been great on the local level, but it's emphasized for us the importance of having that strategy, that high-level strategy of when the documents come in, here's how we're going to categorize them, here's how they get sorted, and here's how we're going to process them. And then here's where we're going to surface them, whether it's SharePoint, whether it's Teams, whether it's OneDrive, all that.
When you kind of think forward, over the next 18 months, what do you hope, when we get to the end of calendar year 2021, you're looking back on the next 18 months, what do you hope we will have all accomplished together between Fujitsu, between Microsoft, and between Boys Hope, Girls Hope?
For Boys Hope, Girls Hope, I think the biggest thing we'd love to accomplish is ending our dependency on our paper documents, referring back to those. And then with Microsoft, we're upgrading to the E5 SKU for all of our people in our headquarters office. And then we're going to hopefully encourage folks across the network to take the same path and upgrade. And we really would love to see a point where by the end of 2021, we are fully vested in the Microsoft cloud. We're using Teams as our phone system, Teams as our collaboration platform, and really have just no dependency on physical infrastructure other than getting the connectivity there. That would be, I think, a huge goal for us. And then Fujitsu obviously plays a big role in that in our digital transformation to get there.
Jeff, how do you see both maybe the lens through how Fujitsu will continue to support Boys Hope, Girls Hope, but just in the notion of, as the industry changes, as customer expectations change and evolve, how do you see both your role and the role that Fujitsu plays in this next 12 to 18 months? Where do you see things going, and do things change? Do we optimize with what we know today? What do you see?
So for those of you that are playing buzzword bingo at home, I want to make sure I get as many buzzwords as possible in this podcast. So I'm going to talk just very briefly about artificial intelligence, or AI, really collecting that sort of harvesting the knowledge within an organization is going to it's going to improve. I talked about digital transformation quite a bit, but it's really that connecting and instrumenting everything around us, the melding of digital and physical worlds, right? I call that the IoT, or Internet of Things. Again, buzzword bingo. In some circles, digital transformation and IoT are used almost synonymously because of the significant value that this new connectivity and information to bring the transformation process. So where's it going, and how are our scanners really going to assist in that? Really, it's nothing more than the simplicity that, the implementation details, using one of our scanners, a document like an invoice is scanned, routed to, SharePoint Online, and then downloaded by a robot that extracts the information and presents it to a human for verification. I mean, that's now and the future.
Bingo!
Yeah, exactly.
I got it. I won. No, I think you're right. Certainly AI, bots, further optimization, learning from now what we know and taking it in. I think optimizing the different needs. I think what will happen also is the specialization of here's the one thing for everybody, but now you can more cheaply and faster build out what individuals, teams, different branch offices, as you get down to the granular level, it really then starts to work for everyone. First, starting with Jeff, are there any events coming up that Fujitsu or yourself are partaking in that people can follow or find out more about you and the company?
That is a great question. There are actually Fujitsu, we're putting on more webinars aimed toward the end user as opposed to our channel. And I would follow fcpa.com. Check out our website. We've got a number of them coming up with a number of our partners like Kofax and Abby and Ignite, where we talk about digital transformation. Also, you're going to be able to find our scanners at every single MTC that's a Microsoft Technology Center coming this fall. And hopefully, once we start traveling again, you'll get to see my smiling face in person. So that's a couple of things. I'm also involved with various, I run the Los Angeles SharePoint user group. We're doing a consolidation and turning it, for now, a California user group. So we've got a number of different sessions, and I think Chris might be coming up on one. Mark, I think you are. So check out, just follow me, get on my LinkedIn with me is probably the best way to do it, because I post everything on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure to have every link and ways to get a hold of you and Fujitsu in the show notes. Pete, is there any way that people can find out more about Boys Hope, Girls Hope, the work that you're doing, anything that we want to specifically call out so that people can learn more?
Yeah, the best way to get information on us is our website, boyshope.girlshope.org. We post everything on there. All of our socials are streamed on that. We've also been very, very active on LinkedIn, so that's another great place to find information. In terms of events, we're still charting that water a little bit in terms of events and what's digital and what's in person. But there'll definitely be some upcoming events. As plans unfold, will be on our website.
Great. Well, we will highlight everything, and we certainly give you kudos for supporting the scholars as the most important thing I think that we've talked about today is really the output of what Boys Hope, Girls Hope does, and hopefully the interest of how all the processes and documents and everything play to that. We want to thank Jeff and Pete for your time today and the work that you do both for your companies and for each other. And on behalf of Microsoft and Chris, thank you for joining the Intrazone.
Thanks, Mark.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Mark and Chris. And of course, Pete.
Let's move in to learn more about Microsoft Ignite 2020, because guess what, Chris? We now know more about Microsoft Ignite 2020. What do we now know more about?
We may have known this for a little while, but we're really happy to be able to share that Ignite 2020 will be officially coming to the world September 22nd through 24th in, wait for it, 2020.
Hey! And as we know, and we can point to now resources from our head of marketing, our CMO, Chris Capicella, put out a great blog post all about what you can expect in these early days to start to tip the hat in what is Ignite. It's global, it's free, and it's 48 hours, a digital gathering in his words. Chris, what else do we know about Ignite?
We'll be opening up registration in early September. Again, whether you're early or late, you're going to get the same discount, free. And by being able to bring everyone together digitally for Microsoft Ignite around the planet, that really means two things for us. One of them is we're not going to be doing the Ignite tour events around the globe as we have in prior years. Rather, we will use Microsoft Ignite as a umbrella for being able to collect and continually update information as we have it. We expect to be doing another Microsoft Ignite digital event happening sometime early 2021. No tour. You can tour Ignite from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, the other point that we want to be clear that Chris added just at the tail end of his blog is that Ignite will not replace Microsoft Build. We will continue to host Microsoft Build as the forum of our developer communities, as a place to come together digitally and continue that. So there will be an Ignite. Chris mentioned there will be another Ignite sometime next year that we will announce, but also that we will not be replacing Microsoft Build. Microsoft Build carries forward.
Really excited about being able to see partners like Fujitsu join us digitally as part of Microsoft Ignite this year. We hope that we're going to be able to connect with many of you through those channels. I know Mark and I are furiously at work getting our announcements and demos and sessions all aligned, so we just can't wait.
I can tell you on our end, Ignite is starting to lift from the fog, and very excited to get to the end of September to share a ton of news, great training, and connecting with everybody in the best digital way that we can.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Intrazone Partner Edition. We want to send a special thank you to our guests Jeff Willinger from Fujitsu and Pete Schweiss from Boys Hope, Girls Hope.
You can check out our show page for links to all of what was discussed today and more. Go to aka.ms/theintrazone. If you're interested in other shows by Microsoft, check out aka.ms/Microsoft/podcasts.
Please stay in touch. If you have questions or feedback for our engineering or product teams, or feedback and questions about the Intrazone, you can contact us at theintrazone@microsoft.com or on Twitter @SharePoint, @mcashman, and @cmcnulty2000.
If you enjoy the show and want to help others find it, please rate and review the show and tell all your friends and colleagues about the show too. Share the SharePoint love. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, especially if you get your podcasts on the Intrazone, because all podcasts are here.
Well, thanks again for listening. We're your hosts, Chris McNulty and Mark Cashman, and you've been listening to The Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 partner-powered intelligent intranet.